Hello and welcome to your lesson on classification of skill. This is the video that will support you to be able to complete your handout and indeed to turn up to class with all the questions that you have regarding classification of skill so we can improve your learning that much further. Now, to judge your learning at the end of this process, your learning outcomes at the top of your handout. So if you want to see what you need to know, then read through those outcomes and they should give you a little bit of a guide. Now, in order to support you extra with this YouTube clip, you can also access this Prezi online. So if you go to prezi.com and search for my name, Geraint Davis, you'll find this Prezi, just minus my voice speaking over it, and that can be a useful support for you as well. So, what is classification of skill? Well, quite simply, it's putting skills into certain groups based on common characteristics. There's always certain things about different skills that are similar, and in that case, you might well teach them the same. With various skills in a sport, they can be very, very different, and therefore you treat them differently. So passing in football is not the same as taking a penalty in football. They're classified very differently, and therefore you would practice them differently, or you should practice them differently. And that indeed is why we bother, because if you can find things that are common about certain skills, you can practice them and plan them much, much easier, and they're much more effective for a coach. We're going to go through now 6 different continuums. What I'd like you to do is add your notes to your handout as you go through, add supporting examples as you go through, and any questions that you have, make sure you note them down as well, because those are what we'll focus on in class. So a continuum, that's the red line going through the middle of this, of what's on the screen. The continuum helps us be able to gauge how much a skill falls to one side or another. So the muscular involvement continuum is talking about how many of the muscles of the body are being used within the movement. So does the skill involve much movement of the body's muscles? If the answer to the question is yes, then we're talking about a gross skill. If the answer is no, we're talking about a fine skill. So a gross skill, therefore, involves large muscular movements. An example of that would be a shot put. A shot put uses almost every muscle in the body. Real powerful and explosive movement, and therefore is a very gross movement. The other extreme of the scale is a fine skill. A fine skill is something along the lines of pistol shooting. So the pistol shooter has to have real control. They use small, intricate movements. In this instance, it's keeping the arm as still as they possibly can and simply pulling a finger for the pistol. So it's a real controlled movement with not many muscles being used. The next continuum is the environmental one. And the key question we ask ourselves here is, does the environment influence the performer? Now, when we talk about the environment, we're talking about decision making, we're talking about technique. We want to know, does the influence of defenders or attackers and where they're positioned, does that influence the choice of technique that you make? Now, a key point to make here is I'm not referring to the weather. So we're not talking about the wind and the rain, how that might change your decision. We're talking about how performers, how other defenders, for example, how they change the decisions that you make. Not talking about the weather. So the continuum here is on an open and a closed scale. So an open skill is affected by the environment. It's predominantly perceptual, and that means that your decisions are based around interpretation. You have to be able to work out how fast the ball is travelling. You have to work out how far away the person you would like to pass to is. How far away are defenders? Are they coming towards you? Are they moving away from you? So you have to perceive and interpret all this information. That makes it that definition of an open skill. So you must adapt your movements. You might decide you want to use a particular technique for a pass. But in an open environment, there's other things that might well change your mind. So you've got to have to adapt your skills. It's mostly externally paced. I'm going to come back to that one in a moment when we look at a different continuum. There's no clear beginning and end, and therefore the skills are often discrete with an open skill. Again, that's another continuum, and I'll come back to that one in a moment. So it's useful to be able to revert back here in a moment and see if you can make some sense of those 2 points. A real good example is a batsman in cricket. Now, a batsman can't simply swing their bat. What do they have to pay attention to? They pay attention to the bowler. When does the bowler bowl? How fast? What type of bounce is it? Is the ball pitched short, long, medium? So this batsman's going to take in all this information and perceive all of this information before making their final decision. They might have decided they were going to go for a particular shot when they saw the bowler running up. but may have to change their decision dependent on how the ball is actually bowled. Now at the other end of the continuum, the closed end, the bowler doesn't have the decisions to make. The bowler, they're really not affected by the environment. They can do the same run-up every time they do the run-up, and therefore it's predominantly habitual. They measure their distance, they do the same technique with their bowl, and they make all the decisions. They decide whether they like it to be a spin bowl, a fast bowl, they're trying to get some swerve on the ball. So all the decisions are down to that person. So it's set movements, and it's